Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, everybody, welcome back, and I'm joined by one of my favorites. It's Miss Frankie Hart. Hi, Frankie.
Hi, Casey.
How's things over at Satya Yoga down there? You're in Florida. It's like 70 out here today. I can only imagine what you got going on down there.
Yeah, we've been having a really warm October, end of October, early November, which is surprising because after the hurricane came through, we had a cold spell, and I think we were all getting ready for the change, but it's pretty warm.
Well, I was just thinking, Frankie, before I got you on, I'm kind of psyched because today you're going to do a show about meditation, and I can't think of anyone, wanting to learn it more from, because I think I speak for a lot of listeners where I'm a complete beginner. I think maybe I might have been in a years ago, maybe once, but I only know what I've learned, talking about meditation. But I know there are people out there like me that are interested. So I'm very excited about. Do you get a lot of beginners like me that come?
Oh, yes, Casey. I think there are more people on the planet that don't meditate than that there are that do have experience with meditation. And so I am really excited about dedicating today's class to people who are new to meditation or who have never meditated before.
So, just going forward, like, is there anybody? I know there are modification stuff, but is there anybody who should not do this? Because I know there's a lot of stretching, and that's all I know.
Wonderful. Every person could meditate. Every person will benefit from meditation.
Okay, good.
Every person. If you're breathing, you can practice, Casey.
Okay.
That's a direct quote from my Qigong master.
Okay, perfect. So I don't have to worry about stretching my mind and doing all this.
That's right.
Let me hand this over to you because I'm very curious and intent, and I'm sure the listeners are with me on this one. So tell us about this awesome thing that you are so passionate about.
Wonderful. So in these podcasts that Casey and I have been doing with you guys in the audience, we've been talking a lot about the benefits of meditation and the benefits of the practices of yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong. But if you've never experienced meditation, it's sort of like hearing about exotic resort location that you've never been to. So rather than just dive into more about what is happening when we have a practice, I thought today we would talk about how to start a practice. And because many of my students, as you're saying, Casey, have no practice before they come, I've compiled a bunch of questions. I thought you and I could kind of go back and forth that are questions that I'm often asked. And I love these questions because I think sometimes when we talk about something, even for people who are experienced in meditation, there's more information that comes to the surface.
Great idea. So how about we go this way? Whenever you want a question, I'll ask you like I'm because I am the beginner. So first thing I would ask is like, what do I do?
Yes, exactly. What do I do? So that is such a brilliant question because meditation is about letting go of doing. So I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase before, but it's a beautiful one. It says, we are human beings, not human doings.
Okay. Yeah.
So the first thing to know is that it's a very natural thing, that meditation is not about someone or something else imposing something upon you. It is about returning to a very natural, very relaxed state of being, right? So that there's a willingness that has to come from within for us to want to explore letting go of doing things, right? I have to be willing to say, for the next 1 minute, often I'll start with a student, 1 minute. For the next 1 minute, can we just let go, right? Can we just let go of all of the thoughts that are in your mind, all of the activities, all of the stresses that are going on? And then when we start to let go, then we start to recognize, oh, this is where I am, and this is what I feel, and this is my breath, and this is the feelings of my body. And we start to inhabit ourselves, right? We start to inhabit the moment. So one of the critical aspects of meditation is that it's happening in the here and now, right? So Ram Dass, some people out there will be familiar with Ram Dass, but really famous guy who has a book out called Be Here Now, right? And Ram Dass is no longer with us, but he created he was a guy way back in the day, Casey, with Timothy Leary, that they were kicked out of Harvard for experimenting with LSD.
Oh, okay. All right. Now I know who that is. Yeah.
So that kind of puts us in an era. And then Ram Dass went to India and he met a guru there. And he said when he met his guru, Neem Karoli Baba, he met a guy who didn't come down. So he said, he and Timothy Leary kept doing all these experiments with LSD, how much and how often, and how do I keep this enlightened feeling when I get into this high state? How do I keep this going? And, but they always came down. And he said then when he met his guru in India, he met a guy who, through this ability to meditate, Ram Dass would say, never came down, right? So in other words, he was able to live in that enlightened state, right? And so that changed Ram Dass's life completely. And so if people are out there, there are amazing videos about his life and his book called Be Here Now. But the beauty of that is simple, right? That we see again, he's not saying, be an Olympic athlete, right? Or be, the next great mind, in terms of science and solving things, right? He's saying, be here now. So this is something that's very natural and within all of our grasp as a human being to do, right?
Okay. All right.
Now, so then there are all these methods out there, and that's what kind of gets us all confused, right? Especially when we're new to it. We'll see this people doing this, and these people doing that, and these people doing this, and these people wearing funny clothes, and these people doing this thing, and these people, all these austere things. Because also usually what you hear about is the more dramatic things, right? Because they make more interesting pictures and and stories. But the truth of the matter is, all of these different methods, and we'll talk about some methods today, all of these methods are just that. We don't want to get attached to a method. The method is just the way in. What is the in? The in is being in that meditative state, finding this quietness within. Okay.
All right.
And
so,
yeah.
I just had just one quick question on that. So that guy that never came down that you were talking about, is that what it's called to be in the state of enlightenment or enlightened?
It is. Yes.
It's almost impossible, isn't it?
It's a tall order. It's a tall order. Most of us have moments of enlightenment, which we would call, like in the yoga world, samadhi, but enlightenment is perfect, nirvana, different words that are out there.
Okay.
I was raised Catholic. There are also those ecstatic terms from Christian religions as well. When you feel you're in the presence of God, and everything else goes away. We have language for this in every culture. But then what happens for most people is then they leave that state and they're caught up again in the ups and downs of life, right?
Yeah.
And so what serves us so beautifully is if we have had a state, experienced a state, even a state of just real relaxation, real embodiment, real joy, it serves as a compass for us, Casey, in our life. We know we got there. We can get back there. We want more of that. We start to make choices in our life that take us more and more of that direction. And so I think the number one reason many people don't meditate is because they've not yet ever had an experience of being in a meditative state. Gotcha. So they don't yet know that this is available to them.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, because you touched on it before. You gave an example of like 1 minute. How long do I do this for?
Oh, it's great. So in the beginning, I would say start really small, like 1 to 2 minutes, especially if you are a real type A person who is on the go all the time and feels like you don't have any time. Okay. Right? Because then you can kind of negotiate with yourself. You can say, hey, I have 1 minute. I have 2 minutes, right? I might have told you this story before, but it's worth repeating. I had a student who was rushing to get to a private lesson with me. Our lesson was supposed to be an hour. By the time she got to the studio, just with everything going on in her day, she literally had 5 minutes left in our session. And she walked in the studio. We were just standing in the door of the studio, and she was telling me everything that was going on. So immediately I thought, well, she doesn't have to relive all that
Yeah.
stuff. So I remember saying, oh, just put your purse down, put your bag down. And we were standing there, and I said, let's just stand here together. And we stood and we did a 2-minute meditation. And at the end of it, she looked at me and she goes, that's all I needed today, Frankie. And she gave me this big hug, and she was like, oh my God, I'm in a completely different state of mind. And she went on with her day. And it was really a beautiful moment for me to be able to witness that, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're always accelerating in picking up stresses, right? It's hard to change the momentum. It's sort of like the law of physics, right? An object in motion is going to stay in motion unless some other force is acted on it, right? So that other force is actually a choice within our mind. So I think, Casey, the most important ingredient for meditation is a willingness, right? We have to find a willingness within ourselves to say, hey, I'm going to see what this is about. I'm going to just see if I can quiet my mind. And I'm going to start with, say, 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay.
It's very highly recommended to practice for 15 to 20 minutes because there's a shift. My Qigong master would say that once you get to like 15, 20 minutes, the exponential benefits of the meditation are coming, right?
Oh.
So if you can do that, ultimately you work towards that. I meditate longer than that in my life because one, I enjoy it very much, and two, it nourishes me to nourish other people, if that makes sense, because of the practices that I'm in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So we did how long? How often should we do this?
I recommend meditating every day, because it's a habit. You know, like if you're teaching a child to brush their teeth, you don't say, okay, today we'll brush our teeth, but tomorrow, well, if you don't feel like it, just skip
Okay.
it. And when we create habits, right, we are so much more likely to do it. So when I'm coaching a student to start a meditation practice, I much more recommend a short meditation that they can stick with every day than a long meditation that they feel like they can only get to, when they've cleared the decks, right? Because how often is that going to happen?
Right. All right.
Something's always going to come in.
I got you. So that makes sense. So for the beginner you were talking about just a little while ago, it's more beneficial, even if you can do 1 or 2 minutes, but do that 1 or 2 minutes for 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
30 days.
3 days.
30 days.
30 days, sorry. Okay, 30
Yeah,
days. And
30
then
days.
maybe you're ready. Then you got some skills to go to the next thing. Now, I got to ask you, how do I know this is working? What do I expect to feel?
Beautiful. So your question really ties in with something I was going to say about the 30 days. So very often when I'm working with a person on this, and then I see them say a week later or 2 weeks later, this can be a person who tells me they cannot sit still. They've never been able to sit still. Then they say, Frankie, I was doing my 2-minute meditation and then it just felt good. I just felt comfortable. And I stayed for 8 minutes. I didn't even know 8 minutes went by.
Wow.
I say, wonderful. And then you know what I tell them, Casey? Don't try to do 8 minutes tomorrow. Just stay with your plan, because we're not in competition with ourselves, right? We want to take away all of those external pressures. So for that natural quieting to come and to feel good, that's a sign it's working, right?
Okay.
My breath starts to feel softer or slower. My mind starts to feel, less racing, a little more comfortable, a little more quiet. I just feel a little better. I don't know why, but I just, I'm going into the next segment of my day and I I just feel a little lighter. I feel a little bit better.
Okay.
My relationships are a little less strained. These are signs that's working. I had that pain in my shoulder, but it doesn't seem to be bothering me right now while I'm sitting here, right?
Okay.
Things like that. Very small things. Years ago, I was in a class that my teacher, Master Howe, was teaching, and he did like a half-hour meditation. And there were a lot of people in this room. There were probably 75 people. And I would say at least 2/3 of them were not experienced meditators. So many people fell asleep. In fact, my friend that I brought was passed out snoring next to me. And when I woke him up at the end, he was like, "Oh, what?" So we haven't mentioned that yet, but I want to say if you fall asleep, that's fine.
Okay.
That's absolutely fine. We are in a culture that spends billions of dollars on medication to sleep, right? So I tell people, if you fall asleep meditating, wonderful. You've quieted your mind and you're able to now go into sleep. Beautiful, no worries.
Gotcha.
Try to stay awake, but if you fall asleep, that is not a problem. So at the end of this half hour, Casey, this guy raised his hand and he said, I just can't do this at all. I'm no good at this. And my teacher said, well, how long? And my teacher is Chinese, so the guy was not really understanding his language. And he said, what? And finally he understood. The master I was saying, how long were you able to keep your mind quiet? And the guy's like, oh, I'll never forget it because it was so specific. He goes, 38%. And my teacher's eyes got really big. He goes, 38%. That's amazing. That's very good. So that also, for everybody out there who's new to meditation, it isn't like you sit down in your mind, you force your mind to be quiet. In fact, trying to resist thought just makes more thought come. It's more like, instead of focusing on these thoughts, or especially disturbing thoughts that are in my mind or work-focused thoughts, I'm just going to focus on something else. And we'll talk about what we focus on soon. But as I'm getting there, thoughts will come. So I often talk about it like weather, right? So you're looking at a beautiful clear sky. And especially here in Florida, we have these beautiful white puffy clouds, right? So this white puffy cloud comes through. That can be a thought or emotion. I'm not going to jump up and down and try to get that cloud out of the sky. I might just actually enjoy watching that cloud leave just as it came, right?
Yeah, good analogy. Yeah. Hey, Frankie, is there any science or thought behind what time of day that this is more effective? Like I heard people do it in the morning. Does it matter? Talk about the time of the day where it's more effective or not.
Yes, there are two reasons that the morning is so highly recommended, Casey, and that's why most people will hear about that. First is if you dedicate the first thing I do in the morning, like for me, like I'll get up, I'll go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, something, just a few very simple things, hygiene things, and then I go meditate. What is perfect about that is nothing else interrupts, right? Nothing else interrupts that, right? I can depend on that smooth flow, right? Whereas if I say I'm going to meditate at 9 o'clock in the morning or 12 noon, there are a lot of life things that happen between the time I get out of bed and that other time, right? And it's very hard sometimes to say no to the outer pressures, and challenges of life, your challenges in work or your family, and to make that time, to carve that time. Some people who are retired, live alone, they have much more freedom, right, to practice at any time. The other benefit to practicing first thing in the morning is generally, and we can't always say this is true, but generally your mind is a little more relaxed, a little quieter. You haven't just gotten that big assignment at work. You haven't just had an argument with your wife or husband. You're just waking up. So those are two things that are really, really going your way.
Mm-hmm.
The other time that's really wonderful to meditate is right before sleep in the evening, because if you meditate before sleep, you will sleep better because you're clearing your mind. So all of those things that your mind is trying to work out as you lie down, especially if you struggle sleeping, to Master Hart would say sleep less, and he really meant it. Like if you spend 15 or 20 minutes meditating, even if you sleep 15 or 20 minutes less, the sleep is better, deeper, more restorative, and your time in meditation is like threefold. So if you meditate for 20 minutes, it's like sleeping for an hour. So it actually pays back to you.
I got
So
you.
those are the two times. But I always tell people to then make it their own. I've shared with you, I was a performer, right? So one of my favorite times to do a standing meditation when I was performing, rather than do it first thing in the morning, is I would do it around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because it was sort of my morning to the evening performances, right?
Oh,
So it would clear my mind. It got my body, all the energy going through my body in a really beautiful way before I would go to the theater to warm up and
yeah.
have a dance performance.
Oh,
You see, there's flexibility.
yeah, yeah. But I also heard that 20 minutes of meditation is equal to like an hour of sleep or something like that. So that's my only question about once we get to that level before bed, it's not the same type of thing. Like if you take a nap, you can't sleep, right? It's totally different.
Right, right. So, if you're meditating, so I'm a big fan of napping. Napping is great, but meditating is different in that. Well, here's something that I wrote that I thought this might be perfect to share.
Okay.
When it comes to meditation or being still, it is not just about a lack of movement or a lack of thought. It has to do with coming into an inner state of profound alignment, a state of serenity or bliss within. It's about stilling the fluctuations of the mind. So here we are, we're awake. We're raising our vibrational state by letting go of resistance, letting go of tension, and we're easing. So by easing effort, we are renewing ourselves, and this new sensation, we were talking last week about the exhilarating side of letting go. This energy rises within us, and it's energy that we can use for sleep. One reason people can't sleep, right, is they sometimes are too tired to sleep, like a little kid, right? They're
Yeah.
overtired, they can't sleep. So we get energy to heal the tissues of our body, energy to have a clear mind, right? We sometimes your mind is all foggy and cloudy, right? And some energy clarifies the mind. Yeah,
Gotcha. Thanks for answering that. Now, uh,
absolutely.
everybody wants to know, I'm sure. Okay, what do I wear and where do I do this?
Yeah. You want to wear comfortable clothing. You want to wear comfortable clothing. That's the only thing that's important at all. Nothing that restricts your waist, particularly because you want your breath to be able to flow very, very freely. And when we meditate, the forehead, the shoulders, and the waist should be very relaxed. You don't want to hold pressure there. So if you have a belt on or something like that, you would just, people came from work, you could just take your belt off, loose clothes. You don't want to meditate in an environment that has a draft, like a cold draft that's blowing directly on you. Your body temperature will drop, Casey, as you meditate. So even people who are kind of hot-blooded, when we get in a meditative state, our body cools. So you don't want to be in a place that's very cold. Especially your feet, you don't want to sit on a cold surface, right? So that's why you would sit on blankets and such. And then ideally a place where you will not be disturbed. And if you're an outdoor person, it's just careful to meditate in a place where, insects and things like that won't go
Right.
disturbing your meditation. Yeah.
Okay. If you do it first thing in the morning, is it appropriate to wear what you wore when you're sleeping?
Perfect.
Relax.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah, absolutely perfect.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Frankie, I think we got to do a part two on this because
Okay.
this
I
has
know we want
it's
to
been
talk
great.
about what to do.
I know, but let me give you we got a minute left, so let me give you the last minute to have the floor. But it's good. We got we warmed up and we still got more to talk about. But let me
Okay.
give you the floor here.
Okay, beautiful. So what I want to say out there in terms of the what to do, like hopefully we've inspired you to want to do some of this. What I want you to do is just to sit comfortably, let your body feel comfortable, whatever that means to you, sitting up well. So your spine is erect, your spine is long. Then let your mind focus just to yourself. Let go of everything else for a while, just 2 minutes. For these 2 minutes, the kids are crying, well, not directly crying, but you know what I mean? They're
I know
like,
you
mom,
mean.
mom, let's do this, right? Just let everything go. Focus to yourself. And then bring your mind to your breath. The breath is probably the best vehicle for meditation for many of us as we start, because it's always with us. Just observe, like observing the waves of the ocean, the rising of the breath and the falling of the breath. And if your mind starts to wander, just bring it back. You can even use the words, I feel my breath rising. I know I'm breathing in. I feel my breath rising. I feel my body breathing in. I know I'm breathing out. I feel my body breathing out. I feel the natural falling of my breath. And staying with this for 1 to 2 minutes, observing soft, smooth breath. No expectation, just willing to let go, feeling worthy. You deserve this time to just let go, to just be you. Okay? And we'll pick up on this more.
Awesome. Frankie, always love when you come on. Great topic. Where do people get a hold of you?
Okay, you can reach me at Satya Life Yoga, which our website is Satya Life, SATYA life.com. And please feel free to reach out to call or text us 863-802-9642 or email us at info@satya, SATYA life.com.
Frankie Hart, everybody. What a great show. Thank you. Can't wait to part 2. All right, Frankie.
Thank you, Casey.
Be right back, guys.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.